Some people still believe the Indiana Fever is a franchise nobody wants to play for. They point to social media scuffles, whispered locker room tales, and the infamous barbs from Cheryl Swoops as proof that the team's environment is, at best, shaky, and at worst, downright toxic. Yet everything we've witnessed over the past few months contradicts those rumors in a dramatic way. Major names are not just considering Indiana. They're actively choosing it, signing contracts, and openly praising the core group of young players who've been grinding under the radar. Outspoken critics once insisted that no star would ever sign with the Fever voluntarily. Now those critics are remarkably silent, especially after Dewanna, one of the league's most respected veterans, publicly declared that not only does she want to be in Indiana, but she also feels it's the perfect place to chase the ultimate prize. That disconnect between the old whispers and the new reality is so strong that even fans who believe in the Fever all along are doing double takes. Are we witnessing a complete shift in the WNBA's balance of power? Or is this sudden hype too good to be true? For a while, it felt like no discussion about the Indiana Fever could pass without some mention of Cheryl Swoops' remarks. Although she's a legend in her own right, Swoops unleashed a wave of negativity by suggesting the Fever's locker room might be less than desirable, a place where star players wouldn't want to spend their best seasons. Her words didn't just echo through WNBA circles. They bounced around fan forums, popped up in sports headlines, and were dissected by commentators who saw them as definitive proof that something was rotten in Indiana. This wasn't a one-and-done statement either. Some fans latched onto it and expanded the theory. If the Fever's environment was truly so discouraging, it would only be a matter of time before the most promising talents demanded trades, refused to sign contracts, or simply let their performance dip. On top of that, swirling chatter on social media added to the narrative that Indiana's fans, coaches, or even certain star players were unapproachable. Some critics described them as toxic, while others chalked it up to a supposedly flawed culture that had never properly recovered from the team's earlier transitions. But every rumor eventually runs its course, and for the Fever, it happened as soon as respected veterans started publicly dismissing these claims. The myths about a so-called toxic culture simply began to look silly. The final nail in the coffin came when Dewanna, also known as Dee Bonner, did more than just sign on the dotted line. She talked about why she signed with Indiana, citing both family proximity and the presence of a dynamic young core. Bonner's choice was so definitive, so confident, that people were forced to reconsider those old rumors. Even fans who held on to the negativity began to realize how incomplete their picture of the Fever truly was. Despite the wave of skepticism, Bonner didn't just join the team and stay silent. She also made a point of calling out the bizarre narrative that Caitlin Clark and Fever supporters were some kind of problem. In her words, there was nothing toxic about wanting to play in Indiana, quite the opposite. It was precisely the winning mindset forming around the team that got her attention, and she had every intention of contributing to it. Bonner's tenure speaks for itself. Multiple championships, an almost unbelievable amount of playoff minutes, and a well-earned reputation as one of the league's fiercest competitors. A player like that doesn't just randomly pick a team because it's close to home. Though that was a factor, her kids live nearby. She joined Indiana because she believes in the team's direction. It's not just about having a solid, youthful roster. It's about the chemistry she saw in the Fever's late-season run. That burst of determination they showed, particularly when everyone else had already written them off, caught Bonner's attention. As soon as she put pen to paper, Bonner challenged the conventional wisdom surrounding the Fever. One of the biggest narratives floating around was that the team was a graveyard for talent, a place where players' ambitions would die. Yet here's Bonner, a proven winner, stepping into that very locker room and feeling excited about it. She made statements that effectively turned Swoops' commentary on its head. Rather than talking about any negativity, Bonner praised the team's potential and hammered home the idea that Indiana's fans are not a liability, but a passionate group poised to rally behind a serious contender. Her opening press conference was filled with references to the fiery spirit she sensed in Indiana. She mentioned the desire to be another puzzle piece in an ascending organization, a puzzle that was already forming around their young stars. She insisted that the Fever's late-season push to the playoffs might have seemed insignificant from the outside, but for her, it signaled a team brimming with potential, a team on the cusp of greatness if it could just get the right veteran presence to tie it all together. It's also worth noting that Bonner didn't mince words about how she felt regarding the online chatter. From her vantage point, the so-called toxic label was never rooted in fact but in speculation and half-truths. She wanted no part of perpetuating that negativity. Instead, she used her platform to call out the misconceptions and direct attention to the real story. Indiana is building something special, and she wants in. If there's one player who changed the entire perception of the Fever overnight, it's Caitlin Clark. Her rookie campaign took the league by storm, deep, fearless three-pointers, mesmerizing court vision, and a swagger reminiscent of all-time greats. Opponents who weren't paying attention at the start of the season suddenly found themselves scrambling to figure out how to contain her. And fans? They showed up in droves, Whether to watch her splatter the scoreboard with points or to see how she'd handle the relentless coverage from hardened WNBA defenders. Clark didn't just perform well, she became a full-blown phenomenon. That alone transformed the conversation around Indiana, because once you have a potential generational talent wearing your jersey, the narrative that nobody wants to play there starts to look foolish. And so it went. As Clark rose, the Fever's stock soared. That's why Bonner's praise for Clark resonated so powerfully. Usually, rookies have to climb a steep hierarchy in the WNBA. They earn respect by grinding through each brutal season, facing double teams, and surviving the playoffs. Vets might toss them a few polite compliments, but rarely do you see them openly raving about a first- or second-year player. Bonner broke the mold when she candidly described Clark as a special talent and emphasized how excited she was to team up instead of facing her on the other side. It's not hard to imagine why Bonner feels this way. Clark's passing elevates everyone on the floor. Her shot-making forces defenses to pick their poison, guard the perimeter and leave the paint vulnerable, or converge inside and watch Clark rain threes. For a versatile forward like Bonner, that's an appealing setup. She can exploit mismatches, float around the arc, or cut inside, confident that Clark will find her with a perfectly timed pass. As Bonner put it, Clark is just a smart player, and that one line says a lot. It means Clark isn't just a highlight reel. She's already thinking like a seasoned pro. Behind the scenes, the duo's budding partnership is generating buzz, extra practice sessions, film study, and strategic conversations about how to break down certain defenses. If you're a fan of basketball chess matches, this is the kind of synergy that can keep you up at night, imagining all the ways these two can dismantle opposing teams. And yet, this synergy is only one part of the story. Clark isn't a lone star in Indiana. She's one point in a constellation that also includes Aaliyah Boston, the emerging juggernaut in the paint. Boston has been turning heads with her rebounding prowess, shot-blocking instincts, and surprisingly polished post moves. People once doubted she could keep up with WNBA veterans, but by mid-season, it was obvious that she was adapting much faster than expected. Throw Kelsey Mitchell into the mix, an underrated shooting guard who, in Bonner's words, can torch defenses if she's given even an inch of space, and suddenly you realize the Fever's backcourt might be one of the most electric in the league. Of course, you can't talk about the Fever's upgrades without highlighting Natasha Howard, another champion stepping onto Indiana's roster. Combining Howard's versatile defense with Bonner's playoff experience forms a frontcourt that could be downright scary. Both players understand how to seal off driving lanes, rotate effectively, and swallow up rebounds when the game is on the line. Individually, each of these players has shining credentials. Together, they could form a fortress. Even Lexi Hull, a name that often gets overshadowed by the bigger personalities, is a key part of this puzzle. Her hustle, willingness to do the little things, like diving for loose balls or harassing ball handlers at half-court, fuels a culture that the Fever are trying to solidify. Bonner sees that fire in Hull and wants to encourage it, making sure that every player understands their role and feels empowered to play to their strengths. When you sum it all up, Indiana's collection of youth and veteran wisdom is something new. This isn't a half-baked rebuild where the young players are too green and the veterans are on the brink of retirement. It's a calculated blend, up-and-coming talents who've tasted a bit of adversity, paired with battle-tested champions who know how to navigate those rough waters. It's exactly the sort of environment Bonner says she thrives in, an energized team ready to absorb her lessons and push each other to the next level. Anyone who harbored doubts about Indiana's locker room harmony or the fan base's support probably felt a jolt of reality when Bonner made her public statements. She not only declared her eagerness to join the Fever, but also dismissed the entire notion that the team or its supporters were problematic. Her dismissal wasn't a coy hint or a lukewarm defense. It was emphatic enough to knock down an entire wall of speculation. Some of this skepticism had been aimed specifically at Caitlin Clark, with critics claiming she might be too intense or too brash for veteran-led teams to handle. Yet Bonner, a seasoned star with more playoff minutes than most players in the league, embraced Clark without hesitation. She praised Clark's maturity, intelligence, and competitive fire. In doing so, she essentially told the league, all those rumors about negativity or friction are nonsense. We get along just fine. Meanwhile, fans have been ecstatic, filling comment sections with renewed faith, showing up in greater numbers, and demonstrating that if you bring them a contender, they'll reward you with unwavering support. Even the fiasco of being labeled toxic turned into a rallying cry for Fever loyalists, who now flock to social media to remind the world that nobody's words can overshadow a team that's actually building for the future. It's become a point of pride. You said nobody wanted to come here, yet one of the league's biggest stars just did. How do you explain that? Beyond mere words, Bonner has already started acting like a leader. She's orchestrating off-season workouts with the younger players, inviting them to film sessions, and creating opportunities for the team to bond off the court. That's the difference between lip service and genuine commitment. She isn't just passing through Indiana for a paycheck. She's contributing to a cultural overhaul that might define the Fever for years to come. Indiana's late-season run last year was the first real sign that the team had fight in it. They nearly clawed their way further into the postseason than most analysts believed possible. Though they didn't end up with the hardware, that surge put them on everyone's radar. Now with Bonner in the mix, along with the arrival of Natasha Howard and the ongoing rise of Aaliyah Boston, the Fever have effectively declared they're done being overlooked. Bonner's extensive playoff experience is the intangible element that can make a world of difference. She knows how to thrive in hostile arenas, how to pace herself during a grueling season, and how to step up when the lights are brightest. She's also vocal about expecting her teammates to adopt that mindset. If you're Caitlin Clark or Kelsey Mitchell, that kind of mentorship is huge. Clark is still new to the league, but she's already proven her fearless attitude. Pairing that fearlessness with Bonner's strategic understanding of playoff basketball is almost too tantalizing to imagine. For Kelsey Mitchell, who has often been overshadowed on losing rosters, Bonner's partnership offers a chance to show the league what's been hidden under the radar. The sudden possibility of having 3 or 4 players on the Fever's roster contending for all-star selections is no longer far-fetched. It's not just fans daydreaming anymore. There's enough talent and leadership in Indiana to turn that fantasy into a plan. That said, nobody on the Fever is delusional. Bonner has reminded everyone more than once that nothing is guaranteed. Talent on paper only goes so far. Chemistry is a fragile thing, and it takes trust, selflessness, and a willingness to adapt. When she references her previous championship teams, she always highlights the unity and mental toughness required to keep pushing through setbacks. But the potential is there. The seeds have been planted. What used to be a conversation about making some noise in the playoffs has evolved into a conversation about making a run at a title. What makes this story so compelling is how quickly things have flipped. Not long ago, social media was buzzing about alleged spats and anxieties that were supposedly tearing the Fever apart. Now, the chatter centers on how this youthful group, supplemented by a couple of impactful veterans, might be on the verge of something extraordinary. It's a testament to how perception can shift almost overnight once a single piece of evidence, like Bonner's decision to sign, contradicts the prevailing narrative. Yet perhaps the most exciting element lies in the future synergy. Picture a healthy, hungry Indiana lineup. Dewanna Bonner controlling the tempo with her veteran savvy, Natasha Howard locking down the paint on defense, Aaliyah Boston steadily emerging as an unstoppable force at the rim, Kelsey Mitchell sniping from beyond the arc, Lexi Hull hustling for every loose ball, and Caitlin Clark orchestrating the entire affair with her high-octane offense. It's a lineup that can adapt to different styles, whether it's a run-and-gun shootout or a methodical half-court grind. And it's a lineup that puts to rest the idea that no one wants to see the Fever succeed. Now fans are left to wonder if the 2024 to 2025 season and beyond will be the moment Indiana steps fully into the limelight. Are they about to dethrone perennial contenders, or at least crash the party in a major way? If you judge by their late push last year, plus the additions they've made, it's more than plausible. The shift in attitude from "we're happy to compete" to "we aim to win it all" is the biggest sign of this new era. So what's the takeaway from all this? Simply put, the Indiana Fever are no longer a franchise shackled by outdated rumors or low expectations. Bonner's arrival, in tandem with a rising star like Caitlin Clark, solidifies the Fever's metamorphosis into one of the league's most intriguing teams. Add in the quiet but crucial puzzle pieces like Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Natasha Howard, and Lexi Hull, and you have an organization that's moving away from rebuilding talk and inching closer to legitimate contention. If you're still on the fence about the Fever, perhaps it's time to reconsider. The transformation is happening before our eyes, and it's fueled by the desire to prove every skeptic wrong. When all is said and done, we might look back on this moment as the spark that ignited a championship run, one that took a team from rumor-laden underdogs to the top tier of professional basketball. And in the face of all that momentum, the old claims that no one wants to play in Indiana sound more absurd than ever.